We stop at the seven consciousness that we've been studying, but anyhow, let's warm up. Let's get a warm up since last time. All right, let's get back to this mental experiences. What is our mental experience? We have external environments: matter, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Perception through the five sensory organs. And this perception, we have eye consciousness, ears, nose, tongue, body. And these are the first five consciousnesses that we've been talking about. And then going to cognition, which is the mano consciousness, the sixth consciousness. And this is the various functions of the cognitive process, including interpretation and intellectualization of the perception. We have all covered the first five consciousnesses and the sixth mano consciousness. And then we also have the ego attachment, the manas consciousness, which is the seventh consciousness, the ego. I think we stopped at the seventh consciousness. And the ego consciousness has been personalizing the foregoing consciousnesses with itself. And it's what we call the personalization. And in the process of personalizing everything and going through the cognitive processes, we create emotions. Emotions created from this process. And that's the reason why we suffer. And usually this emotions, it's in three categories. It's either depression or aggression or addiction. Depression is easier to understand, but when people are not depressed, some category of people, they are very aggressive, and there's another expression and arousal of emotions. And some, they don't have depressions, they may not have apparent aggression, but they have addiction, which they engage the emotions in the addiction. Addictions to many things. All right, then last store consciousness, the alaya consciousness, which is a store of the present and the past karmic energy. This actually summarizes all our mental experiences. If you look at this slide and always think about it and analyze it yourself, you probably maybe sometimes find the answers to it. Most people say we're not happy, we're unhappy, and what are the reasons for being unhappy? Right now, the present society, we have a lot of with the advancement in technology and science, and with the increase in production in our materiality, it seems that we have enough means. We have enough means to live by. We have enough means, especially in North America. We're not suffering from starvation. We have enough means to live by, but no meaning to live for. There was a story in the Qing dynasty. The king with his ministers in the Qing dynasties, with the ministers, were looking at the harbor on top of a very tall pagoda inside a temple, and they saw many junks going, traveling on the water, on the ocean. A lot of junks going by, and north to south, south to west. And then the king asked the ministers, why are there so many? I saw a lot of junks going from one place to another. The whole ocean was full of junks on business, shipping goods from one place to another. And then the intelligent minister said, I only saw 2 junks. One junk is looking for wealth, the other junk is looking for reputation. People like that will have enough to live by, but no meaning to live for. And if you analyze the mental experiences, then probably in here you can find out some answers. All right, let's get on. When we study consciousness, we study from 9 perspectives. We already mentioned that. The objects of the 7 consciousness, for example, the most, moral nature, realms of activities, concomitant mental functions, necessary causes and conditions, and how does each consciousness function, spiritual transformation towards enlightenment, and leading sentient beings to enlightenment. And the object, most of knowledge, moral nature, and realms of its activities, if you compare the 6th and the 7th, the 7th consciousness only have the perceived object is objects distorted by imagination. And for most of knowledge, it's a fallacy because the 7th consciousness is dealing with the ego, the self, and the self is opinionated. Is always from itself is always looking at everything with a biased lens, and that's why it's most of knowledge by itself is fallacious, because you are looking from your own ego. The moral nature is neutral, and we already have talked about that. We explained it in detail last time. So the 7th consciousness, as far as perceived objects is concerned, is objects distorted by imagination. Because when you see everything with a self, with an ego. And you already have distorted the externalities with your own ego. But you may not realize it. So it's objects of perception, it's objects distorted by imagination. Most of knowledge, knowing it from yourself perspective, your ego, your egoistic attachment perspective is a fallacy. And as far as moral nature, the 7th consciousness is neutral, is indeterminate. It could be wholesome, it could be unwholesome, so it is neutral. And then its realms of its activities, the 7th consciousness works in the 3 realms, not in this higher realm. It's in the Kamadhatu realm, the realm with materiality and desire, Rupadhatu realm with materiality only, and Arupa Dhatu, the world with only consciousness. So the realm of its activities, of the 7th consciousness, is in the 3 realms, all the 3 realms. The 7th consciousnesses, what do we mean by neutral? There's 2 kinds of neutral or indeterminate: obscure neutrality and unobscure neutrality. When we study the 8 consciousness, is unobscure. But with the 7th consciousness is obscure, because even though it's neutral, you always look at things with a self. It's not neutral. So it's neutrality, because we don't know sometimes it's wholesome, sometimes it's unwholesome, but then it's neutral with obscurity. What obscure is obscuring, is polluting the consciousness. So it is obscure neutrality. Then, this is something that we need to know when we study consciousness. There are three universal natures of our existence, which we should know. But if you are reading books about our consciousness, which Nalamattrata, then you always see these three natures. The first one is dependently arising nature. The second one is the nature of attachment arising from self-centeredness. And the third is perfectly realized true nature. If we simplified what is in that slide, we simply say, this is what sentient beings cognize the world. When sentient beings cognize, see the world, perceive the world, they see it with these two nature, dependent arising nature and the nature of attachment arising from self-centeredness. When the Buddha cognized the world, it's perfectly realized true nature, if we just simplify the meaning of it. But let's get into this and think about what these three natures means. Dependently arising nature, 依他起性, dependently arising nature. All things and phenomena are brought into existence based on a wide range of causes and conditions. Everything that exists is because of it's a composite of causes and conditions. They are in a continual state of flux and changes. And these conditions and composite and causes always change. In Yogacara, this manner of occurrence is called dependent arising nature, meaning that things only exist because of their relationship with other things. So, we usually use an analogy to describe these three natures. Say, the analogy is when a person walking on a path during the night, at nighttime, he sees a discarded rope. You know, rope that you use to tie up things, fishing ropes and big, huge ropes. And at nighttime, a person was walking on the path and he sees a discarded rope on the road. With another hard, close look, now he carefully scrutinized it. He thought it was a snake, but another close look at it, oh, it's not a snake, it's a rope. As the person considered this further, what is the rope made up of? The rope is made up of ham. What do you call that? It's a kind of grass that you use to make a rope. It's a kind of plants that sometimes they make into a rope, or sometimes they use it. Even, I think they derive marijuana from it, a kind of a hemp, H-E-M-P, hemp. And when a person sees that rope at night, he thought there was a snake at night, but actually it is not a snake, it is a rope. And what is this rope made up of? It's a hemp. It's made up of hemp. All these conditions, you know, when you tied it up, you use glue, and so that rope, it dependently has a dependently arising nature because its existence depends on many, many conditions and causes put together. The material, the labor, the work, everything put together. Everything is like that. It's formed because of conditions and causes. Even our own body is conditions and causes. There's no exception. Nothing exists without a reason, without cause. But we grasp to all cognitive objects, assume them to be substantial and attach firmly to them with self-centeredness. This mental attitude is called the nature of attachment arising from self-centeredness or self-ego. 变即所执. So the man misconstrues that rope to be a snake because he thought that it's a snake, but it isn't. But in order to transform this tainted consciousness into pure wisdom, one must cease in being trapped by this attachment. The Yogacara Buddhism teaches that when one becomes permanently separated from this habit of mistaken attachment through practices of meditation and understanding and vinaya and precepts, and correctly sees all things that of the dependently arising nature, then our consciousness will transform into wisdom, leading to enlightenment. This enlightenment is the perfectly realized true nature. So everything is dependent arising nature, and we attach to them. It becomes the nature of attachment arising from ego. But if we can work through them, purify our consciousness and wisdom, then slowly we'll arrive at perfectly realized true nature through practice, through meditation. So these are the three natures. The next aspect we look at is the first five consciousnesses. With all this, the first five consciousnesses, the sixth consciousness, the seventh consciousness, each consciousness has its concomitant mental functions. So if each consciousness is a king, for example, then each king has ministers. This minister will work with the king to either do good or bad things, good things and bad things. For the first five consciousnesses, there are 34 ministers, 34 mental functions inside of you, helping your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, your body to react to externalities. 34 concomitant mental functions. The sixth consciousness has 51, all of the mental functions. All together we have 51 concurrent or simultaneous or spontaneous mental functions. So in other words, when you see something, when you hear something, when you think about something, it's not just the thinking itself. It has a lot of ministers in you helping you to perform, helping you to talk in a wholesome way or unwholesome way or neutral ways. The sixth consciousness is extremely powerful. The sixth consciousness has 51 concomitant mental functions. And the first five have 34. But the seventh consciousness that we are considering now only have 18. We already have covered the first five and the sixth. Now, the seventh has 18. It has the first five omnipresent functions. So in other words, your ego consciousness needs the omnipresent functions, needs the attention, the contact, sensation, perception, and volition to work. Your ego needs attention to be egoistic. Your ego needs attention to contact. Your ego has also sensation, perception, and volitions. So the first five omnipresent function works in all the consciousness. You see all these five, there's the first five, and then particular functions. The seven consciousness only have one of the particular functions. Which one? The intelligence. The intelligence could be the tainted intelligence and the pure intelligence. Your ego needs some intelligence to be egoistic. The ego is not fully dumb, totally dumb. Your ego needs certain kind of tainted, egoistic intelligence to push your ego forward. So there's one of these, which is intelligence, is present with the consciousness. How about unwholesome mental functions? All the troublemakers, ministers. The seven consciousnesses have 8 primary and 4 root unwholesome mental functions. So the seven consciousness only have 12 unwholesome mental functions. And how about wholesome functions? Because it is egoistic, it has no wholesome functions in it, no good ministers in it. And how about indeterminate functions? Your ego would not feel sorry. When you have, the ego itself would never feel sorry. So in itself, you're always egoistic, and you don't think that it is sorry to be egoistic. When your ego thinks sorry to be egoistic, you already have get onto the perfectly, at that second when you feel that your ego should be eliminated, you shouldn't be egoistic. At that time, you are already getting out onto enlightenment at that instant of thought. So indeterminate functions, it has no indeterminate functions. Drowsiness, that means not mindful. Your ego is always mindful to be ego. Your ego have no investigation and have no scrutiny. You just work, everything you see it with egoistic attitude. So concomitant mental functions, 18 with the seven consciousness. Only 18 concomitant mental functions. So you can see from this, we have 8 consciousnesses. The first 5 have 34 ministers to work with them, to perform, to behave, to talk, to think, to carry out volitional actions. The 6th consciousness have 51 ministers. It has a huge parliament with a lot of ministers helping it out, and there's 26 bad ones in here, 26 bad ones. It also has 11 good ministers in your 6th consciousness. So it is your 6th consciousness that help you go through the enlightenment, because the 6th consciousness is extremely powerful. And sometimes if your wholesome ministers all working, the power of your parliament of the 6th consciousness surge onto the wholesome functions, then you're on your way to enlightenment. But you only have 11 ministers aiming for the enlightenment, and 26 of them pull us down. The 26 ministers, they're bad ones that pull us down. So this 5 and 5, we need them. The 6th consciousness need them. The 4 is indeterminate. So for the 6 is 26 plus 11. These are the most active. So actually when we're doing meditation, when we are improving, we always use the 6th consciousness in our daily affairs, in our daily living. The 7th is the ego, and it has 18. And of course, the 8th consciousness also have ministers. The 8th consciousness, I can tell you right now, is only the 5, the omnipresent functions, the 5. Because it stores everything. All right, so we only have half an hour. I can't talk too much. It's just a warm-up for today. I've just been back, and now if you have any questions, you can always ask at lunchtime. And hopefully within the next 10 sessions, we'll finish the 7 and 8 consciousness. And then we go into another topic. But this is important that if you study the consciousness, it's easier to understand sutras. When you read sutras, then there's so many terms in it that you may be able to understand if you really can get onto this.